what's going on, Freedom Life Church, man? Welcome back, part 30. I honestly lost my spot.
Part 30.
Part 30. Or, okay. I mean, we're starting the alphabet. Part 1, double A.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I think it was 5.
Hey, part 5. We did finish chapter 1 and got in a little bit of chapter 2, so like that was a miracle in itself.
We did. People were excited about that.
People kept asking, are we getting out of chapter 1 today? Are we getting out of chapter 1? Are we getting out of chapter 1? So it's such a good thing, and I mean, now we're starting to move really quick into seeing Jesus and starting to see his work and move with him, and it's gonna be pretty awesome. I know that you talked about it, but is there anything in particular on Sunday that you felt that you needed to add or just kind of talk a little bit more about?
Well, I wanted to say again, I mentioned it like in passing a couple of times, but I don't want people to feel like we didn't talk about the end of chapter 1.
Oh yeah.
Because, verses 21 through like 45, there's like 45 verses or something like that in chapter 1. We didn't skip those. We just didn't do like, I think what we could have done is take each little snippet, each little moment, and build a whole thought around them. You can certainly do that. So I'm not saying that that's bad to do. I think it's great to do. It's wonderful to do. We could do it. And there's still time. We could just shift it up a little bit, and I could back up and then walk through each moment and then disappoint everybody that we're back in chapter 1 again. But I really wanted it to be really, really clear that I do agree that we could walk each little moment, see all those separate moments, from the guy with the unclean spirit in the synagogue to, Simon's mother-in-law, to all of the people gathering at the house and Jesus healing them, to when Jesus has the conversation with Simon, everybody piles up at the house.
Yep.
And so Jesus kind of steals away into a desolate place. We could stop and talk about the importance of what that looks like because Jesus does that often. So we could easily go, so Jesus is stealing away, so you need to do that. Like we could easily go, yes, or even the conversation that he has with Simon when Simon's like, hey, everybody's looking for you. We've got to heal people. But Jesus goes, let's go to the next town because I need to preach.
Yeah.
We could talk about really the significance of what he's saying. And I touched it. He's got a message. He has something to say. That's really what he's here to do, is to proclaim, because he says it back in in chapter 1, verse 15 or something. He says, I've come to proclaim the gospel of the kingdom. That's what I've come to do. So he hasn't just come to heal people. He's come with healing, yes, but healing with a purpose of opening up and teaching and presenting and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom. So he's done it that way. And so we could stop there. We could have stopped in that moment and really looked at that. The conversation, the moment that happens with the leper, right there at the end of chapter 1. What a beautiful moment. Yeah. What a beautiful moment. And it's amazing. And we could stop and just spend time on just that. And so I'm not saying that I'm opposed to that or that we shouldn't do that. We could very easily do that. I think just the way that I looked at it as far as the sermon was concerned for this past Sunday was looking at it from almost kind of flying over and seeing this kind of real grand theme that is developing as Jesus introduces himself to the world.
Yeah.
And so we did look at just the snippet of him calling, and Andrew and Simon and James and John. We did look at that particular moment, but Jesus is beginning to introduce himself. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to see that collectively. I wanted us to kind of feel the movement Because I think so often, one of the things that we didn't spend a lot of time on Sunday was just the idea that we can so often put Jesus in a box.
Yeah.
Where he's this. He is a good moral teacher. Or he is the healing guy. Or he is all of these different boxes. And I think that ultimately that's what the religious guys want from him. Quite honestly, I think that's what the crowd wants. Mm-hmm. You obviously get that even his disciples, because even Simon is wanting him to get into a particular thing.
Yeah.
This is kind of like your niche. Like, this is what you do. And Jesus, in the whole text, because you can feel the rhythm of it, he rejects all of that.
Yeah.
He refuses to get in any box because he's not in one, because he's God. He's above all the boxes. Yes. And that's what you get by the time you get to the beginning of chapter 2. Because really, we could have kept that moment going into the little moments that come after the moment with the four guys and their buddy, and he's a paralyzed guy, and they drop him down through the roof. We could actually go past that, because it goes into the calling of Levi or Matthew, the tax collector. It goes into moments where his disciples aren't fasting, and there's a question about fasting. There's a question about the Sabbath. Like, we're going to start seeing kind of like, round 2, fight between him and the Pharisees and the scribes and all of that. You're going to start seeing kind of round after round after round of this kind of bout between them. And of course, those rounds don't go well for everyone but Jesus. Okay, so Jesus, it goes really well for him because he's going to start showing them some things. So we actually could have made the whole sermon go from chapter 1, verse 21, all the way down to chapter 2, maybe even all the way through chapter 2. Like, we could have let the whole thing keep going. We don't have time on a Sunday morning. We barely have time to do what I normally do. And so I really felt like I wanted to just land in that first section of Mark chapter 2, because that's really the first time Jesus introduces himself as God. Yeah. That's the first time he does it. Yeah. And so he's been setting up all these little moments that Mark is giving us, is leading us to this first moment where Jesus is like, I'm God. That's what he just said in that text. So he introduces himself as altogether different. So he's not just a healing guy. He's not just a prophet, that shows up with some good moral teaching. He's none of that. Yeah. He shows up because he's God in the flesh, and he introduces himself for the first time in the book of Mark as God in that first section of Mark chapter 2. Yeah. And that's why I felt like it was important for us to just kind of stop and kind of Selah, kind of pause and breathe for a second to feel what he just did. Absolutely. Because we're seeing all of these really epic moments, but it's all leading to one place, and that is for him to say, your sins are forgiven. Absolutely. Nobody can forgive sins but God and God alone. Mm-hmm. You're right. Because I'm him, And so he introduced himself for the very first time. And so I thought that it was important for us to kind of see all those moments flow together to get us to this one big moment. Because you feel the intensity. His fame is growing. The text actually says that. His fame begins to grow. It says it in a couple of different ways in a couple of different texts. So by the end of chapter 1, he heals the leper and things go crazy because this is unbelievable. And so his fame begins to spread, and there's this intensifying element to what he's doing. But it's all leading to this one moment where now all of a sudden everybody, and we did talk about this, everybody's on the edge of their seat, waiting for him to heal the paralytic guy. Yeah. And just say, man, get up and walk, and then the place was going to freak out. But he doesn't do it. He says it in a way that he knows is going to stir. I mean, it's so religiously and politically explosive what he just said. Yeah. It shakes up the religious world immediately. Mm-hmm. It shakes it all up. And I think that's what Jesus isn't walking through these moments going, I wonder what I'm going to do next. I wonder what situation is going to come my way next. He's doing it with a purpose. Yeah. So he's gathered a group of guys around him to come and witness, to come follow him and learn and become fishers of men, get around him and get into this message, get into what he's about. And then you see him heal people. Demons are running out of nowhere, running into church going, are you here to kill us? So even the demons are going, wait a second, this is different. And so there's so much of that that's happening. The one thing I wish I maybe would have spent a little bit more time on or swung us back around is, and I'll mention it here, is everybody in the text doesn't get who Jesus is except for the demons. And we talked about this in staff meeting this week already. Is everybody gets it. Everybody doesn't get who Jesus is except for the demons. The demons know exactly what is happening. And I think that's funny.
It's very, very particular.
Because his disciples don't get it. Like Peter's like, you need to come heal people. And he's like, that's not exactly what I'm about. The crowd doesn't get it. They just bring a sick grandma in tow, to come see the healing guy. The scribes don't get it. The religious guys are like, you're blaspheming. Like, who are you? Who do you think you are? Mm-hmm. And the demons are like, we know exactly.
Please don't kill us.
Can you please? We're begging you.
Yeah, please don't hurt me.
Is our time up already?
Yeah, it's like all of this talk in there.
And so, so Jesus just shows up to the synagogue and the demons freak out like, this is it? And because we know who you are, you're the Holy One of God.
Yeah.
We know exactly who you are. So everybody else is guessing. Everybody else is unsure or they're making guesses. The demons are not. They are 100% positive that the guy they're looking at is God in the flesh. He's the Holy One of the God of the universe, and their time is up.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's so funny, and how fitting it is to think about it that way, with even the culture that we live in. We just don't see him for who he is. And I'm reminded of the words of James. Okay, you believe that there's a God? Great. Well, even the demons believe that and shudder. So it's got to move a little further than that. Your faith, your life has to be placed in his hands, and your trust, the whole of who you are has to be placed in his hands. And that's what separates the beliefs of the demons from the beliefs of the followers. Yeah. Because the demons fully believe who Jesus is. Yeah. They just have no allegiance. They don't want to follow him. They just plead for their own lives. Yeah. But the follower says, I know who you are, and that draws me to follow you, and I want to lay my life down to follow you. And even Peter and Andrew and James and John don't get what they just did. Back when he says, follow me, and they just drop everything and follow him, it's almost as if they don't really even know why they even did that. Yeah. Because the Spirit of God is moving them towards Jesus, and now they're going to learn. Yeah. Now they're going to learn and grow. But then Jesus is walking through all these little moments, all these little things. I've got authority over the spiritual. I've got authority over the physical because I'm God. And let me show you what that looks like. And so I really wanted to keep, so you see what I mean, is I really want to I wanted to keep all of that together, really flowing together. Yeah. And so, because we could have spent several weeks in chapter 1, like we would still be in it. If we take each snippet, we would still be there, which would be fine, which would be a great approach. But what's cool about that is that then in the future, we could do the book of Mark again and do that.
Yeah, you can really break it down, absolutely.
You know what I mean? So that's the reason why I love the Bible. The Bible is endlessly insightful because it's the living and active Word of God. It is. And so we could go back and study the book of Mark again, just like we could go back and study the book of Exodus again, or the book of Jonah again, or the book of Galatians again. We could go through all the book of Ephesians again. Yeah. I mean, we've walked through several books together. We could go back and do them again and see more and just dig up more treasure that's in the Word of God. And so the book of Mark is no different in that regard. So because I wanted to keep it all as one thing, because it's like I said in the sermon, I mean, it's a 24-hour period with Jesus. That's pretty awesome. And then it's just a handful of days later until Jesus is in that moment with the paralyzed guy, and he introduces himself like, I'm God. and that's what it looks like. So
I think it's really interesting because I remember you mentioned about like demons and like even they know because like they all freaking out. They're like running to him. Hey, please don't. He silences them. But I think also another one of my favorite parts, and I think you mentioned this in Sunday's message, was when he healed the leper. And, you know, he was doing these moments. He goes, hey, don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
Say nothing.
Yeah.
Say nothing.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, I'm going to go tell everybody.
I will say this. I think that if I'm honest about Sunday, whenever I mentioned it, I was a little disappointed that our church didn't catch the humor.
Yeah.
Because when I used the phrase, and I think just because it sounds really bad, I was like, he just disobeyed Jesus.
Yeah, I know.
And I don't think that everybody, because I think that statement made it feel really uncomfortable because you're not supposed to. Yeah. But the humor in it is hilarious.
Yes.
I mean, it's extremely funny what just happened because Jesus looks at him and it says he sternly charges him.
Yes.
Don't tell anybody. And that guy's like, okay. Yeah, whoa.
Then just
Whoop, pinky swear. You know, like, I won't. And then he leaves.
tells everybody.
And tells everybody.
knows.
He's like, he can't help it. He can't help it.
Yeah.
Which, again, if you preach just that moment, there's something about that, I think, that you just can't help but talk about what Jesus has done for you. If Jesus really has done, I'm about to preach. If Jesus really has done what he does for us, even in like when we think about salvation, if Jesus has really saved us, it makes sense to talk about it.
Yeah.
And so this leprechaun, he's like, yeah, I won't say anything. And then he's like, as soon as Jesus is like out of eyeshot, hey, everybody, you know, and he wants to tell everybody, and because he can't help it. It doesn't make sense for a changed, transformed person to not want to shout it from the rooftops.
That's good.
To say, look what Jesus has done for me.
Yeah, that's good.
Look at it. And that's such a microcosm. That moment is such a microcosm of what happens as Jesus heals the real sickness of sin
in your heart.
In the hearts of every human being. When he begins to do that work in human beings, that's the reason why it doesn't make sense to be quiet.
That's so good. Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. And so Jesus, you know, no, there's something going on there, you know, Jesus asking him not to say anything, but the guy ignoring him makes sense.
Yeah, makes absolutely.
But when I said it like he disobeyed Jesus, and everybody's like, oh my God, you know. So I think they missed the humor in it, honestly. Like, I think they missed the humor in it, that it's actually extremely funny that Jesus sternly charges him, and the guy's like, absolutely. Totally, and then leaves, and then literally tells everybody.
Yeah.
Where then it says the whole town shows up at the door, like nobody can get in, and that's what sets the stage for the paralytic guy not to be able to get in, is because this guy disobeys Jesus and goes and tells everyone.
Just creates this whole.
It's so cool. It's such a really beautiful moment. It makes me want to preach it now, but we probably won't. We'll move on and maybe next time.
Well, for those of you who are joining us, go watch the previous messages.
Yeah.
Because it will help really set the stage for even where we're at now, but also for the future. And it's just going to be a fun ride now that we finally have gotten to Jesus being in the picture.
Yeah, he's here.
And it's just going to shape the dynamic of, I think, all of the messages to come. And it's just going to be exciting, and it's funny. Mark is funny, and it's just, it's such a great, it's definitely different than all the Gospels. I'll say that every time. It's very, very encouraging. Well, we're excited. I know it's going to be awesome. I know part 1 double B is going to come to play here pretty soon.
It's going to be great.
It's going to be great. But before we leave, baptisms this Sunday.
Can't wait.
This coming Sunday,
we have
April
a couple
25th.
of people.
Yes.
We have a couple of people so far.
I am so pumped. I mean, it is such an honor when we get to just celebrate people, you know, just expressing their faith in such a way in front of the congregation. Like, sometimes I feel like I take that for granted, that I get to be a part of somebody's faith.
Yeah.
And outstretch and saying, you know, and so if you want to get to be a part of that, go online to freedomlifechurch.net, sign up.
Yeah.
We would love to have you and do any of that. But man, I'm excited. I'm excited for Sunday, and we'll catch you guys all next week.
See you.